Hello and welcome to the Dobber Prospects final ranking meeting. I'm Luke Sweeney, our North American Director of Scouting, and I'll be joined here by almost our entire scouting staff as we dissect our top 32 for the upcoming 2025 NHL Draft. With our final ranking article already out, this video will hopefully give some insight as to how we formed our rankings, whose rank is being pushed by who, and where some of our most contentious debates occurred. We'll be picking up at third overall, as Matthew Schaefer and Michael Misa were our team's unanimous 1 and 2 overall picks, and thus didn't really spark much debate. So, without further ado, let's dive in. There's a good reason why we're not going to spend too much time debating Matthew Schaefer and Michael Misa for first and second overall. With Matthew Schaefer, he's pretty clearly our number one overall prospect, an opinion that is pretty much universally held across the scouting sphere as well. With Schaefer, he's a 6'2" defenseman who is incredibly mobile on his skates, both in terms of his top end speed, but also in terms of his agility, quickness, and his ability to turn on his skates. He's also very mature defensively for his age, and his offensive instincts, his creativity with the puck are all very high end attributes. And on top of it, he's less than a month away from being eligible for next year's draft. He's very young and has tons of runway, which, based on his level of play this year, I think makes scouts very, very excited, and rightfully. The other key piece with Schaefer is that we're not talking about just a high quality young player. We're talking about a young man whose character is also very highly regarded across the league. After the NHL Combine and his interviews there, NHL teams walked away very impressed with his poise, with his maturity, and his presence of mind, saying that it was like talking to a 30-year-old, and some others saying that it was like nothing that they've ever seen. And then when you throw in the level of adversity that he faced this year, both on and off the ice, in terms of injury and personal tragedy, it really does speak to the level of runway that Schaefer has to be able to grow his game. In terms of the injury piece as well, these are very freak injuries. Mononucleosis and a broken collarbone are not, it's not like a lower back injury or a knee injury. So as a result, we feel very confident having Matthew Schaefer as our first overall pick. Michael Misa is in his own way a very special player. It's not often that you get players of his tool and skill level that are just so thoroughly committed to playing the game the right way. He's such a detailed player in all three zones. Last year, I was really looking for him to push the envelope a little bit more offensively, but this season I've really grown to appreciate his game. The top end speed, the shot, the handling ability are all definitely top of the class, though he plays in such an unusually projectable way that those tools don't really stand out as much compared to some of the other players in this class. He can absolutely pull out those highlight reel moves, but it seems like he prefers to make the right play rather than trying to ever force a bad one. He's also a rare talent when it comes to finishing at the net front, which is something that will definitely serve him well as he continues to progress. Misa was a record-setting scorer in the OHL last year, and I see no reason why he won't be a top-line play driver at the NHL level as early as next season. So, with numbers 1 and 2 out of the way, let's jump right in to the third overall pick.
I think everyone has him at number 1. I think the next unanimous is Michael Misa at 2.
Yeah.
The draft, well, not just our rankings, but the draft in general will really start at pick 3. Actually, it's kind of split. I see a couple for Porter Martone, I see a couple for James Hagens, I see Caleb Denoyer, and I see Jake O'Brien. So I'm open for a discussion here. I guess let's put it over to, let's start with David. I want to hear about the OHL guy, so Martone, I guess.
So I have Martone one spot lower at 4.
Yep.
I just think that James. Well, since I'm forced to talk about Martone here, I just think Martone is a player that I think is victim of having a lot of attention throughout the year. I think that no matter how well he played at the start of the season has been kind of overshadowed by his troubles post World Juniors. But I still think that there's a plenty useful player here. His offensive talent is not going away. I thought he was really, really good at the World Cup for those couple of games he played. And he just seems like he's going to be able to step in and play with men relatively easily. I don't think the upside is so ridiculous that like he justifies being put in the conversation with Schaefer and Misa, but I think that he's one of the very, very few confident top six forward options that we have this year. And I think he properly merits this range.
Perfect.
But it does seem like Hagens has the most first place votes, and he's got 3 second place votes. Sorry, so I think it's Hagens Martone.
I've seen a lot of college hockey this year, I guess. Obviously, the expectations were so high with Hagens, and the D-1 is always going to be hard to follow up. And he's obviously one of the most talented players in this draft, maybe the most forward-wise. And I think there were ups and downs over the course of the year. I think there were real issues with his game. Like, I don't think he's a perfect player. I don't think he's a first overall pick. I don't think that he's that the people that have problems with him are, imagining or hallucinating his weaknesses. But at the same time, I think that he's a guy that he's shown just the exceptional level and multiple times, and I thought he was really good in spurts at Boston College this year, and I think ranking him much lower than 3 might make you look foolish in the future.
One thing to consider is like, yes, he was kind of number one coming into the season, but at the same time, I think everyone knew that there was probably going to be a longer development pathway for him, despite being one. Like, I think we just take it, we kind of just take for granted that someone picked first overall will play in the NHL from day one, or at least by the next year. I assume he'll probably play as a D+2, but like I don't know, it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't. You know, I so I think that's worth considering is that he would have. Look, he's not going to take 5 years to actually play, obviously, but um, I do think there's a lot of juice to squeeze. It just might not come right away, like some of the other guys. Are we okay slotting Hagens at 3 and Martone 4? And then the debate for 5 and 6 is between Frundell and O'Brien.
For me, the case for Jake O'Brien is if we're looking at this thing 3, 4, 5 years down the road, I think he has one of the higher ceilings in the draft. I just think the way he processes the game uh, is unlike very many in this draft. Couple that with the size, he hasn't filled into this frame yet. Plays the center position, is competitive, has good two-way acumen. He's definitely not as advanced as a Frundell or a Denoyer, not by any means. But I think when you look at the toolkit, and again projecting a little bit out into the future, I think he has a case or a ceiling as high as anybody kind of in this range.
Can we go to Eloi with Caleb Denoyer?
Yeah, Denoyer has been tremendous all year, and he stepped up his game in the playoffs. Um, just the motor of the entire Moncton Wildcats team as a 17-year-old. You don't see that very often. Uh, Extremely intelligent, extremely diligent in all 3 zones. Even when his offense isn't going, he's gonna impact the game defensively, physically. He never stops working. Um, his skating is good. I think with more physical maturity, it's gonna get even stronger, even quicker. Uh, the way he processes the game, I don't think he's as flashy or creative as O'Brien, but he's one of the most intelligent players in the draft. And I think he's a very safe bet as like potentially a two C and even maybe a 1C. I would be fine with O'Brien above him, but I think this year he showed much. He showed more offensive upside for me than Frondell.
I don't think it's a secret that I'm not a fan of any of these players, but um, I do like Caleb Denoyer slightly more than O'Brien, and I'm not such a big fan of Frendel that I dislike having Denoyer over him. They're in that same tier for me. The average says Denoyer, Frundell, O'Brien, and so does our agreement. We're a bit more split on O'Brien than we are on Frundell.
I believe that Eklund will be at 8. And I'd just like to speak about Eklund as well. And I know I don't have to convince David of this, that's for sure. But like he's a dog. He's man like he's not like he's a lot like his brother in certain aspects, and he's a lot different than his brother in other aspects. The guy can rip it. He can rip it from the sidewall, from the out front in the bumper. He just plays with tremendous pace. Maybe he should change speeds a little bit more. But he competes so well. When you're looking at a sub 6 foot thin forward, they have to be either extremely smart, or they have to have at least be extremely smart, extremely skilled, and have a great motor. And he's got pretty much all of those. His motor is so good. He plays way bigger than he is, and like there's, I think if you were to listen to what I just described of him, and then you saw his stats, you wouldn't be surprised that he translated so well to the pro game already. So yeah, I think he's just a great player, and we'll put him at 8.
I'll say that there's a lot of potential for Eklund also feeling silly down the line, considering that he put up the best Allsvenskan season since Elias Pettersson. I think that he's one of the best players in this draft at compounding his advantages and creating them himself as well. I think that's kind of where like the split happens for me. Eklund is just a little bit better at getting the puck and then playing with it. I feel like O'Brien kind of needs the puck fed to him. Denoy kind of gets those advantages, but then doesn't build on them super well. I think Eklund has just the nice happy middle there.
I think with
That's
Eklund
fair.
as well, like he's like a guy who's like, he has room to grow in his size. He's only 170 pounds. I mean, like he's already a bit really physical, engaged guy. I mean, once he puts on that weight, once he gets more of that physicality, like to that strength to go with the physicality, I think he's gonna be like just a really dominant player.
I think the next range of guys is, like I said, is we're looking at Brady Martin, we're looking at Carter Bear, Lyndon Lakovic, Radim Murka, and probably Jackson Smith and Roger McQueen. So does anybody want to make a case for somebody to go in at 9?
I'm gonna say that I think that this should be Lyndon Lakovic. He is the one player that like everybody here more or less has in this range, and he's the guy that we all agree on the most. If we're going by the room, 9 and 10 should be Lakovic Bear. Like
I'm okay.
it is amazing how we fit there.
Yeah, it's not for no reason that we've had Lakovic ranked around this range all year long. He's a phenomenal skater, not just for his size. He's a great skater. He can really handle the puck, and I mean, despite what the scoring totals say, he can really fire the puck too. And needs a little bit of trimming, but it's good. And I just don't see, outside of Lakovic, a better player available in this range.
Yeah, I feel like NHL draft wise, Brady Martin might go this high just because everyone is foaming at the mouth at Sam Bennett and seeing what he does and like projecting Martin to being that kind of player. But I think that that's a bit easier said than done.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, I like Martin, and I have some time for him, but I think if you're really looking for that, I mean, like, pardon the term, that beast, that guy who can really play that playoff game, then Carter Bear is definitely a name that I think I prefer. Even if it is just by a little bit, I think I would go Bear and then Martin, but as long as he can recover from that injury, Bear was a beast all year long, and I think I would definitely have him ahead of him if he was still healthy.
I agree. Like I would take him just a little bit later.
Yeah, if we go with both of those guys back to back, I think then I think 11 has to be Brady Martin though, because a few of us do have him in the top 10. I have him at 9. I think Seth has him at 8. I think Kareem has him at 8 or 9. So I think he's kind of the next logical pick there. Because I don't think we can drop him any further than 11 though.
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with everything you said on Lakovic. I actually think he has a ton of upside, and I think he kind of makes the game look easy. One of the other things that I think we're seeing that's really important in the NHL right now from wingers is play off the boards and playmaking off the wing, and he has that in spades. He has a good shot. You know, I know his numbers like didn't knock anyone over this year, but he was also on a really bad team, and he was the leading scorer on that bad team. So
Sorry,
go
I just
ahead.
wanted, before we move on to Bear, I just want to say Lakovic was also insanely involved in his team's offense. Almost 50% of
Yes.
their total goals. That's insane.
And I will say for Bear and Everett too that he dealt with like a lot of injuries in the second half. He kind of fell off, but he was dealing with a really depleted roster.
Yep. I mean, the only concern is the injury, and obviously, like the pace and physicality that he plays with. It's real concern, but he's a real player. So
Anybody want to speak about Brady Martin here before we move on?
He hits really good. He hits really, really good, and it's very easy to see like why he's gotten so much attention this year. I thought he was very, very admirable at the U18s too. Showed a lot of of that playmaking upside that I think kind of gives credence to that idea that he could maybe be a top six center. I'm not on that train, but I think that there's an appeal to him that just doesn't exist in a lot of players in this year.
I just think Brady Martin knows the type of player he's going to be in the NHL, whereas Sam Bennett, although he was physical, like very physical in the OHL, I don't think he thought he was going to be the player that he is now when he was drafted, and I think that it was their time to transition into, oh hey, this is how actually I will be effective in the NHL. Whereas I think Brady Martin is well aware of how he's going to win at the NHL, and that's honestly it's so key to know. If you don't, then you're just going to be going down a path that just isn't best suited for you. So.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add one thing real quick. Another thing Brady Martin does that I think differentiates him from a lot of the prospects kind of in this range, if he's not scoring, he's still able to impact the game. And that's such a monumental skill as you get to the next level because it's difficult to score. And I think we're all kind of in agreement that the top of this draft is probably not in line with some of the stronger drafts. So if you're looking in that range, even if he maxes out at 50 points, which by the way, I think he's better than that, but hypothetically, even if he's that type of player, I just think he does so much outside of scoring that's going to benefit his team, not only in the playoffs, but in regular season competition as well.
So we have Potter, Murka, McQueen. That would be the next tier. Potter, Murka, McQueen.
Yeah, I think you guys all know who I'm going for here. You guys know that I've been a huge Cullen Potter fan all season long. I've definitely come down on him a bit recently. I've begun to see a lot more of those processing concerns that I think other people have seen a lot of, but I do still think that they are a bit overblown. I mean, he is a top skater in the draft, probably like top five at least. He's got a great shot, great handling ability, awesome creativity. I mean, he just checks a lot of boxes for me as a potential skill forward. This is also where I think I put it to you guys because I've made it very clear how I feel about Cullen Potter, and I've been very clear that I prefer him in this range. But I also know that that's an extremely contentious opinion, but I do believe in his skill set enough that in a weaker draft year, I can totally see him in this range.
Right now, obviously, I think Potter. I've been high on him all year. I think most of us have been, and I think we've kind of made our stance that us as a group are high, Cullen Potter fans and whatnot, and I think we can still do that and rank him, behind McQueen and Murka if that's the route we go. I think McQueen is obviously the health is coming out, but the combine, it seems like everybody magically gets healthy around combine time every year, so who knows what's going on there. But he's obviously just, a 6'5" center. Like the kid's a monster. He's got good hands. He can skate. I think he's underrated how fast he is. And then you've got Murka, who I think will cause team some headaches, but it's a tier. I probably would go McQueen, Murka, Potter, and maintain Potter at whatever that would be 14. But that's at least how I see it.
I just need to comment on we can't talk about McQueen without talking about the inherent risk that comes with taking him this high. And it's got to be something that we're all okay with, because for all of the good upside that there is here, we need to remember 60% of this guy's points come versus Medicine Hat and Regina. His injury, even if he's better now, it is chronic. It will be something that stays with him for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that injury is going to stick with him, not just because it's chronic, but
Yeah.
I think also largely because of the way he skates. I mean, I remember seeing it, I think, earlier in the year. Scott Wheeler had a really good way of putting it, which is that he cheats his mechanics. Like, he gets a lot of acceleration, but he does
he's
so
not
in a
mobile.
way where, like, he overextends his back and it puts a lot of strain on that. I just have a hard time seeing with his size and the way he skates that not continuing to impact him as he goes down this road.
I was going to say too, like he's 6'5", he's a center, he is physically strong. I mean, a guy like that could be a top 6 center. That kind of sounds like, just based on the reward, that's a lot higher than what Colin Potter's upside could be.
Exactly. I'd also add in, like, if we're talking about the risk of the injury, which by the way is completely valid, we also have to talk about the risk of going after a guy who's what, 5'9", 5'10". I mean, look at
5'10".
Marco Rossi, who's got the exact same bill, just had 60 points in the NHL as a center, better two-way play proven. Not a ton of interest in him. So
And I'd
all
say
you
it's
guys'
silly.
points
I
are
mean,
valid.
that just means it's free value, right? Like just because it doesn't. I mean, just because Rossi's being shopped around, it doesn't mean he's not a valuable player. It doesn't mean like
True.
Didn't
teams
say he's
are
not
like that.
valuable,
Minnesota's not being silly by shopping him the way they are.
but then our teams being silly by not going and getting
Yes,
him and paying what market value would be. Well,
yes.
let's say there's a lot of teams you think are being silly.
I mean, a bunch of guys like this, like under 6 feet, and like they keep on getting shopped, and people are like, "Oh, how does this guy get moved?" And then like 2-3 years later, he gets moved again, and it's like, all right, well, this is just a constant thing where teams just don't see him as like the top line guy that they hope he'll be.
I think
Okay, well, all that is true. I also don't think it's ridiculous to say that there are far more players in the NHL that look like Colin Potter than there are that look like Roger McQueen. There's maybe 3 players in the league that look like McQueen, like Tage Thompson, I guess, who's 2 inches taller and a much better shooter. Adam Fantilli, who's much more physical and a much better skater. Like, it's not a common build, whereas 5'10" guys who are great skaters and have some energy, there are lots of guys in the NHL that look like that.
I think like with McQueen, I agree with the sentiment. Like it's really hard to create time and space in the National Hockey League, and if you're 6'5" trying to create like with your hands, like you just naturally use so much space. Like you require just a ton of space to make plays and whatnot. So I get that sentiment for sure. But how many guys in this draft do we project as actual like top 6 skill guys? I think McQueen is a guy that I would take as a third line center all day, and at this range, that's kind of what we're looking at. Potter obviously has the skill to be a top 6 forward. If he doesn't do it, some people say he's an energy guy. I don't necessarily see that. And then, I mean, it's a toss up. I get the sentiment with points too, but I guess like good players have been abusing bad junior hockey teams like for years. Like that's kind of just what happens, unfortunately. But
But like my point with
thing-
that was that he struggles versus good teams. When space disappears, McQueen struggles.
I mean, you could say the
Well,
same
and I
for
would
Potter,
also
though, like
I I would say it's a little different. Potter is not playing against bad teams in the WHL. He's playing against the toughest division of the NCAA hockey that there is to play. As far as American hockey goes, Colin Potter can't be playing in a harder spot right now.
that's fair. That's true. That actually is true. But I don't know. Like I saw like over the year, like when he played against Denver and when he played against Duluth, and like it's a different brand of hockey, and I agree with that sentiment. But I think these guys are close. I would go McQueen. I think McQueen's a little bit safer, even with the injury. I'm not a doctor either, so I can't really say, but I'd be fine going
Are
either,
we
I
still
guess.
on 12 right now? Are we still looking to fill 12?
Yep.
The thing I would say about McQueen in talking about the risk is I would question his ability to impact the game from a third or fourth line role. You know, I think he's better suited to playing in in the top 6. But if he doesn't hit that ceiling, then I would question his role.
Do you think that like a guy like Murka could do better in a bottom pair role than McQueen in a bottom 6?
Yes.
And I will also say, like, from a ranking standpoint, like we also still haven't taken a second D-man, and we're in the teens. I think
Especially a righty.
Smith and Murka are both like, I kind of have them in the same tier. And I think, I don't know, I think it could be smart to insert one of them here.
I think Murka is like really safe bet to make the NHL. So I think that could be a good pick maybe at this moment if we're not agreeing with McQueen and Potter.
I think it's hard. I think it's hard to argue against taking a 6'5" right-handed defenseman that can create offensively. But that's just my personal.
I'll do
belief
it
in that.
for you. He's 6'6".
So we're going Murka 12, McQueen 13, Potter 14, and then are we looking at like Kendall, Cootes, Hensler, Smith range right here? So does anybody want to make a case for Braden Cootes? I guess Colin, let's hear you.
I mean, I think I've banged this drum kind of all season, but I think he's kind of a can't miss prospect, to be honest. And I think in this range, like it's a no brainer. I know that he met with Vancouver, I think this last week I saw he had dinner with Vancouver. They're what, 15 or 6, picking at 15 or 16. But just as a player, he just does everything. I think he's really smart. He was playing on a young team. I mean, I watched, I don't know, I saw quite a few games live. He does all the little things. He plays in every situation. You know, I saw him out killing off 5-on-3s. He does it all. And I think that he's like has a very high floor, and I think his ceiling is higher than people give him credit for.
Yeah, no, and I really like Martin, so this shouldn't be taken as a slight against him. But those two have been really lumped together all year long until very recently, and I think it's gone kind of under the radar that how dynamic Cootes is and how high his offensive upside is, considering like his skating, which is very high end, I would say, his shot, which is very good as well, and his, I think, very underrated creativity. It's just that offense maybe didn't get to pop as much as we would have liked this season, or
Because of the team he plays on, you know.
I'm good to go Cootes here, truthfully.
Yeah, I'm a Cootes fan myself.
I go Smith and then Cootes.
I'd have Hensler here myself. I'm not the biggest Smith fan, but I'm a big Hensler fan. I think he's really projectable. He plays great rush defense. He's a great skater. And Jackson Smith, I have a lot of issues with.
Yeah, I think that there's a conversation to be had about Hensler actually being the best defenseman outside of Matthew Schaefer in this draft. I think with every other defenseman, you can poke holes in him. Jackson Smith just doesn't have really good decision making on the puck. Like he will make mistakes constantly. When you watch him, I think that was like really on display at the U18s where he just was constantly bobbling the puck, constantly making errors on retrievals. There's a lot of polish that is just absent. And I think Radim Murka. So I'll say Radim Murka also struggles with like playing outside of his reach. I think that once defenders or more actually attackers get in his personal bubble, his body is space, he really struggles to correctly maneuver around them, and it leads to him looking silly sometimes. I don't think he's like an otherworldly puck moving defender either. He's not bad by any means, but I don't think that he brings the safety that a Logan Hensler provides in that projection. I think Murka can probably be like a bottom pair defenseman without much struggle, but I think Logan Hensler's ceiling as maybe like a foil on a top pair is very real. Devin Tays kind of style, even if he brings a bit more size and physicality to that, just because his skating is so good. There's so many ways he can support play, even if it's the subtle stuff.
Yeah, Tays and Forsling are definitely the two players I've been comparing him to all season long. And though I don't think that he's going to be at that level, I do think he plays that style of game. I think he plays very projectable defense. He's good off the rush. Like you said, he's an excellent skater. He's got the good defensive stick, and he's smart. I have far less issues with him than I have with a guy like Jackson Smith.
So do we want to go Cootes, Hensler, rather, Smith, Kindle?
I really, really soured on Jackson Smith at the U18s. If I have him like hanging on for dear life at 21, and I could like him less. I'm really, really skeptical on his hockey sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the common sentiment. I think he's kind of tumbling on everyone's draft board. I would just say I would say the same thing for Smith and Murka, that I think both of them would benefit from a simplified role and just playing a simpler game, which I think is what they will be asked to do at the next level. I think they both played a ton of minutes this year and were just kind of asked to do everything for their respective teams. And I don't know that that's necessarily the best situation for either of them. I think in the past, we've seen Smith, when he is asked to play a simpler role, do really well playing like as more of a shutdown D man, just because of the physical tools. And I think that that's very possible going forward. So I'm not I'm not ready to just, I don't know, just destroy the kid because he had kind of a rough tournament.
Well, I don't think it was just one tournament. I think it's fair to point out that he was asked to play more of that shutdown role at the tournament to kind of balance out that really young roster, and he didn't look great doing it. He's been positioned as this guy who can transition into being sort of a shutdown guy, but I don't really feel like there's a lot of evidence of that. It feels like he sort of has the style of game that he'll really need to take apart to be able to figure out that role at the NHL level. Kendall, on the other hand, is a guy whose game seems really malleable. I mean, he was one of the main guys for a couple of years in Calgary, and then they went out and got Tanner Howe, and he transitioned really beautifully into being the third cog on that line with Howe and Talk. Totally the same thing at the prospect showcase. He looked awesome next to Lakovic and Martin, and didn't need to be the main guy on that line either. So while his profile might be a little bit less projectable than a 6'3" defenseman, it seems like he kind of has a clearer path and kind of knows his role a lot more than Jackson Smith does.
I absolutely love Ben Kindle too. He reminds me a bit of Konsta Helenius, and you all, or some of you know, I was very, very huge fan of his last year. So the way he
Yeah,
thinks the game, it's special in my opinion.
I see him a bit like Matt Barzell is how I see him. Even if I think like the upside never really connects. There's so many players that are able to make NHL careers doing what he does. I think he's more likely a winger. I don't know if he's got like the physical traits to play center at the next level, but Matthias Michelli is a player that I think that I have correlated to him all year, and Michelli's one of my favorite NHLers, so I have no qualms doing that.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of Konechny, who's also one of my favorite NHLers, so I really have no issue doing that either. I really, really like Kindle a lot.
Okay, so we're going Cootes 15. Sorry, we're going.
Cootes, Hensler, Smith, Kindle.
Okay, so I guess now we're kind of in that range where we're looking at like Reed, Reschny, Zonnon, and so
If we're going for next player, I would say Bill Zonnon would be my next player. I would really want to keep him within the top 20. I just think he's a really, really special player. If we're projecting guys like Brady Martin to go 11, I think that someone like Bill Zonnon, who despite being a little more raw, brings, in my opinion, more physicality, more intensity, more offensive ability. That's just such an appealing player. Um, the fact that he can play center and the wing, both at very, very high levels, is really, really special. Um, I think that he's kind of he is geared for the playoffs in a sense that Brady Martin is as well. He might be a third line player, but he's going to be like a damn good one.
Well, I think we're in that spot now where like if you're getting a like if you're getting a surefire good third line player, like that's just where we are in this draft, right? Like
Mhm.
it's like anybody who's left who has top 6 upside also has like a high, not a high, like also has a non-zero chance of never making the NHL. Like we're kind of we're stuck between the guys who, yeah, they might be absolutely nothing, and there's maybe like a 30% chance of that, but they could be a top 6. I think with Zonnon, you're looking at a guy who's probably a third liner, but maybe has a little bit more. And I think if he's a third liner, he's a good player. He's big, he's strong, he plays with intensity. Saying, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you guys said. Zonnen is very versatile player, very smart, extremely competitive. I've only heard good things as well from people around the league about his character. The kid has only been getting better and better throughout the year, and last year he wasn't seen as much as a top prospect, and now he's there, and I think that's because of how hard he works. Uh, Very smart. He's a great skater. Even if he looks a little bit wonky, I think he's gonna put on some muscle. It's gonna get even faster. It's a player that I think primarily a winger in the NHL, but can also play center. So I like him more than Carbonneau. Carbonneau, he's got some really attracting qualities like his skating, his frame, his shot. He can be a bulldog on the puck, but I don't think he anticipates or reads the game really well, even though there's flashes sometimes. Um, yeah, like you guys said, I think he's top 6 or bust, but maybe I'm not as optimistic as most outlets out there. I would probably have him in the 20s, while Zonnen maybe like late first, early 20s.
I just to not leave you on an island. I think that his QMJHL playoffs was very, very revealing as to how poorly he plans out his attacks sometimes. Sherbrooke kind of came to that series with an idea of how to shut Carbonneau down, and it was extremely effective. He got really frustrated really quickly. They ended up losing that series in 5, and Carbonneau scored 2 of those goals in the 1 win they got. So when Carbonneau was isolated, Sherbrooke dominated. Um, and I think that not being able to problem solve QMJHL defending is a little bit of a hit to his hockey sense that I think he will probably need to beat some allegations about the overall skill level not being as high as we might believe it to be.
Mhm. And if he can accept maybe a lesser role in the NHL, say third line, he will need to become more consistent, and there's some maturing to do there as well. Like you said, he was losing his temper really quickly. I think there's some work to do with Carbonneau, but I think he can maybe niche himself as a like third line scorer. But yeah, I'm not very optimistic about him.
Yeah, and like Carbonneau has more of the clear like top 6 level tools, but he's a lot riskier. So I think we can go Reschny then
I
Carbonneau
mean, I'd
here.
probably make the case for Cam Reed. I think, like, just in terms of Reed's game, I feel like he's just like a highly intelligent puck mover. I mean, he's not the biggest guy; he's only 6 feet, but I mean, like, just the way he moves the puck, just the way like he thinks in transition. I mean, I can easily see like a number 3 defenseman, power play quarterback. I can see him, like putting up, like maybe 30, 40 points in NHL. I think that the upside that Reed has, like, and he's an engaged defender too, so he's not just a one-dimensional guy. I think that everything that Reed has in his game, like, looks like the type of modern NHL defenseman that you would really like in a player.
I also don't think he needs the power play to be effective. Like, I think there's definitely tons of smaller defensemen where that's the case, but I think Reed's good enough defensively. Like, he can stay in front of his guys very well off the rush. He's a good active defensive stick. He's physical enough that I think that he could make it in a bottom pair role as well. I don't think that it's top 4
And I
or
will
bust.
and I will say too, I look
I
at the
I
data,
don't
I do tweets, I look at the data. This guy's an analytical dart, and like the data loves Cam Reed.
Yeah, I think I'm the one with Reed on the lowest on my board just because I kind of feel a bit more passionately about the problems that Luke brought up. Um, I'm taking small samples as large cases here, but I'm going to point to his OHL playoffs again, and I think where Kitchener as a team really struggled to take off was against Windsor, where just their big bodies did not let them produce anything. Um, and Cam Reed really struggled to create offense in the playoffs. Um, I think he has something like 4 assists in those series, and maybe against Windsor and London, 3, something like that. It just goes to show that if he's struggling to create for himself at this level, how confident are we that that puck moving ability explodes at the NHL level? NHL level.
Not, but I don't think that's a huge issue. Even if it doesn't, I still think that he's a bottom pair
I
guy.
mean, I think that's kind of why we got to consider Carbonneau and Reschny here, because they're the 2 players that I think genuinely have a shot at doing that.
Yeah, I think I prefer Reschny. The pace is still an issue. The foot speed is definitely an issue, but I also think he's come a long way this year. He started off pretty rough, and he's really improved. And I don't usually put a lot of stock in the intangible stuff, but he really is a big game player. He scored big goals and had huge points at multiple tournaments and multiple stages of the season for Victoria. That part of his game is pretty undeniable. And he scored a heck of a lot too. So I totally see the appeal for him here in this range.
Things really start to open up here. Let's just say that.
Yeah. But it looks like Eric Nilson is a name that is near there. Alexander Zhuravsky, Malcolm Spence, Shane Vansaghi.
So, so with Nilson, because I was trying to get my list for Sweden all organized, and for me, it was between like Nilson and Gastrin for that third spot, and I ended up going with Nilson just because I like I see like so first of all, super intense, super shifty. Um I really tried to analyze the clips of him playing pro this year to get a better gauge, and just super fearless, hits everything. Um and he really showed a lot of like promise in terms of like being able to resist pressure and finding the open man super quickly, making plays of pace, and also I feel like with his frame, he's not like the biggest guy, but he's definitely underdeveloped at this point, and I feel like he has a lot of room to fill out and get stronger, and I feel like that's only gonna make his potential go even higher.
I'll say to that, I saw that usually he's been marked as 154 pounds throughout the year. So just at the combine, he actually weighed in at 166, which is a lot better for him, a lot better for his draft stock. I feel like he's a guy who kind of struggles at times with like dealing with much more physical guys, but it kind of says something to like how much Nielsen loves to like go into those physical battles, because even if he gets overwhelmed or over challenged, like he's still gonna go into it. He's still gonna like fight for pucks. He's gonna battle. He's gonna go 1v1. And I think for a guy like that who's not the biggest guy, like once he puts on more of that weight, like it could definitely be more effective.
I think Nelson has a really good like base on his skates too. Like I look at a guy like Frundell. Frundell's 207 pounds, whatever he came in at, and guy gets knocked over pretty easily. I think Nelson, like you can tell he's strong from the bottom up, from the ankles, from the feet. Like this is a guy that gets around the ice super easily. He sees plays, and I'm normally not too inclined to players like that, but Eric Nelson he's a really fascinating player, and I think Michigan State next year is like the perfect spot for him. He'll play a role and he'll play alongside some really good players.
I echo that too. I don't think it's talked about enough how valuable it is, because that Michigan State program is so good at making sure their players put on weight. Like that's the one thing they do, if anything else. Um, so I'm a Exactly. So, I mean, just look at the bodies that they've acquired, right? Like Caden Lindstrom, Mason West, Shane Vansaghi. Like these are beefy boys that came in lanky and are not leaving lanky. Um, I think that it's it's just exactly what Nilson needs.
I would probably go to Shane Vansaghi. I think this season, like just Michigan State's been a huge revelation for me. I wasn't a big fan of him at the NATP, but just watching him this year, like he looks so much more comfortable playing like this sort of game against like this bigger competition. He's physical, he's strong. He loves to play like a full game. Surprisingly, like for his size, he's not the fastest skater, and I think there's something a little like wonky in like his footwork, but like his acceleration, his first step is really impressive. Like I think he's, a guy like if you like get him like an NHL skating coach, this is a guy who can legitimately be a top 6 player. I feel like there's real potential in there for Vansaghi to be like this really dominant power forward in the NHL.
Yeah, with Vansaghi, I don't think there's any question about the checking upside. I totally agree with you there, Austin. What I am more concerned about is the scoring upside. I mean, he's got the good shot, the skating, like the athleticism is good, but I mean, especially towards the end of the season when things started to tighten up, he just had a lot of just plays blowing up off his stick. And if you want to look for a guy who I think has a similar kind of approach to the game, but with more size and a lot more skill, I would be more inclined to a guy like
Yeah, I agree
Nestor.
with
I
your
think
sentiment
here.
about maybe the upside with Nestor being higher. I think his puck skills are really good. Obviously, Vansaghi played at a much higher level, but he's a lot older and I think a lot further physically along. If I wanted somebody in this draft that I think could be a bottom 6 player quicker, I think it would be Vansaghi. But Nestor I think he's going to take a year in the Western League, maybe this year, maybe another year in the USHL, and then he's going to go to UMass, and that's a great spot for him. And I don't think you can go wrong. I think I have them, like 2 spots apart, but personally, I would go Nestor here. But I don't know if I would go Nestor this high. I think we're at, 25, 23, 24?
Yeah.
I'm okay going Nestor Vansaghi if that's okay. Is this where Malcolm Spence, Gastrine?
Do we have Sharovsky in this range?
Yeah, it's around.
Jurovsky is the better name, yes.
Yeah, he's the only guy in my region that I have with a top round rank. There's a lot of ways it can go sideways for him, but I think once we get to this point in the draft, at least in this year's draft, we're looking at one skill set or 2 skill sets that we think can translate. And I think I was telling Jordan a couple weeks ago, as far as like puck handling and sense, offensive sense specifically, I don't know that there's 7 guys better in this draft. He really is a high end handler. He sees the ice very well. I think the skating's better than he gets credit for. He put up, obviously, he dominated the NHL, but what's important is I think he was around point per game against the gold division as well. He got some games in the playoffs in the KHL, which is huge. That basically never happens at that age. And he didn't look out of place. I think he even got an assist. So to me, he's one of the very, like, usually the guys in this range, I think if we're projecting, it's based on the fact that they're just really big. Jurovsky's not really big, but he has this skill that, like, if I squint, I can see it maybe being like a complimentary top 6 guy at the next level. But obviously, there's a lot that could go wrong between now and the next level.
I wanted to ask you about Prokarov.
Yeah, a few people have asked me about Prokarov. So what I would say with him is I personally don't have him first round. I have him probably closer to the top of the second round. My thing with him is the physical tools are outstanding. The physical package, the size, the fact that he's willing to use it, all excellent. I can see how those things would translate. I just don't see the hockey sense and skill for him. And to me, especially in this range where we have other guys that I think have similar profiles, I think I just lean towards them a little bit more because I think they're a little bit more developed in those other areas. I think Prokhorov's really raw, and I think he's going to have to overcome a little bit more to make it at the next level because some of those skills are really just like they don't play, at least now.
I really liked his puck skills and his skating, even for a bigger guy. I think he also plays with a lot of jam, a lot of compete. That you like to see that for a bigger guy. And the hockey sense, yes, he's not like the most refined right now, but I think if you can coach him to play in just a north-south crash and bang style of play, I think he could be like potentially a good middle 6 player down the road.
I think the conversation around him kind of just revolves around
Bedford.
how raw he is, right? Like it's so hard to talk about him because there's so little to go off of what he is going to be in a couple of years. Um, I think that the package is enough that I think this year it's worth taking a bet on, but it's a hard sell to think that a guy will just sit in Russia for 3 years like him and magically turn out an NHLer. Can I just get a bit of conversation around him? Because I am shocked that we have a U.S. high school player in the first round, despite him being 6'5". Like, is there? I know the playmaking is good, but I think that there's just a long way to go. Is this just like an upside bet?
I mean, so like the
I think
reason
it's an
he's really
upside bet.
like, mostly like the big thing, like why he was still in high school is that he was playing football and he still wanted to like be on the team, playing as the team's quarterback, and that really impacted a lot of it too. Plus, it's Minnesota where a lot of guys, from that state, like they really like staying there. They don't. The USHL isn't much of a priority for Minnesota guys. Usually they do go, but in Wes's case, a lot of it was just about the football, really, more than like anything.
I think with West
You're good.
too is he's a guy that he hasn't really played that much hockey. Like he spent his summers playing football, and the hockey season is only 25 games. So he's gonna go to the USHL and play like his first real hockey season next year. And even then, he's playing football next year still too. So I think there's a lot of upside there in the way that he hasn't really played that much high level hockey yet. And when he gets to wherever he's gonna end up, I think Michigan State or Notre Dame or something like that. But I think by the time he gets there, which might be a year, it might be 2 years, I think it's a pretty safe upside bet that when you get a guy that's 6'5" that can ski it like that, that has the assertiveness that he has to attack the game, I think he's a decent chance right now at this stage of the draft.
There is precedence as well for picking USA or US high school guys. Like Sam Renzel went around this range. I know he played the back half of that season in the USHL. And look, he's looking like he had a tremendous season this past year. Last year we saw a Canadian high school guy go in the first round.
Yeah,
Not to say
man,
he
how's
should
that
have
work
gone in the
out?
first round. Yeah, I know. I didn't think that he should have gone there, but like there's definitely precedence as well. And yeah, like we were saying, um, it's more of a choice because of other things as well that he's in playing high school hockey, um, more so than than that's just kind of where he was stuck with. So
And I will say like Minnesota, and I will say with Minnesota, like there is a lot of allure in playing high school hockey compared to like every other state.
I see a guy that like he wasn't even sure if he wanted to play hockey until literally the last moments before the NHL draft, and that's just likely because he never like the or the NCAA football options that he was getting were probably pretty poor. I think that I was looking to the teams that sent him an offer, and the best one was like Kent State. Um,
yeah, I know
it,
they're like Midwest
Yeah,
schools or FCS schools. They're not big. They're not Power Five schools, but at the same time, like I don't blame them for that. Like I don't know if you make it the NFL, you're making like another decimal place over in terms of money. So
no, go
I
ahead.
just know like he had a pretty like traumatic year too. I know like off the ice as well this year, and he I think I don't know. I don't really fault him. I know he was leaning football for a long portion of the year, and maybe that's why he's coming back next year. But to play football, um, in the fall, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not too concerned from what I've heard.
yeah, I'm okay with what he's doing, truthfully. Like it's not like he has commitment to it's not like he has commitment issues with getting with like the daily grind or becoming a better athlete or a commitment to sport itself. It's it's the other things, and I'm okay. I'm absolutely okay with him here. So we're at 28. We just finished 28, so we need 29. So what about like Riker Lee, Blake Fiddler, Milton Gastrian, Jack?
I would say Blake Fiddler should be the next guy off the list, but I also see some cheering for Carter Amico on the list, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, this is around where we had him prior to the injury. And though I think we were definitely pretty harsh on his skating at the beginning of the year, I think he's got some decent quickness, some decent agility. Um, and at the end of the day, he's a 6'5" right-handed defenseman. So I'd be wary of dropping him much further than this.
Yeah, agreed
Okay,
for sure.
let's do that then. This might just be the area where we have all the tanks. Amico, Fiddler, like Will Horkoff's probably coming soon. You look at Prokarov. Like we're kind of entering in Nesbit. We're entering like the big boy territory here. So
Also, like I know he doesn't have a ton of fans in here, but I think we're gonna have to make a decision on Keishon Aitchison as well at some point. Yeah, like I think that's maybe our most controversial player. I think that's a range. That's a range we're gonna have to figure out where we're gonna put him in.
we got Amico at 29. Are we putting Blake Fiddler at 30? Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah.
Okay. And then 31, 32, are we looking at like Jack Nesbitt? Are we looking at Will Horkoff? Are we looking at Riker Lee? Okay.
Yeah, I would take Aitchison first.
Okay, let's go with Keishon Aitchison at 31 then.
Oh, just real quick, can I ask? So I'm kind of hearing a lot of players mentioned, and general consensus seems to be like not a lot of fans on all of these players. Just out of curiosity, have any of y'all watched much of the Papanicus? Yeah, because he's someone. I mean, I think he's been climbing in some of the other rankings, and to be honest, like I actually really do like him. I think like when his game is on, like he looks like he could be a first rounder. And I know that might seem crazy because we haven't really talked about him at all in any meetings, but he's a big 6'4" right shot center. I think he was a February '07 birthday. Looks like a really good play finisher. Like he's someone who I think like most likely is going to be early second round. But he's someone I actually like in this range. So I don't know if any of y'all have any thoughts on that.
I do like him, not that much, but I do think that he's a very interesting player. This is his first year playing. I really liked him as a physical option in Spokane, um, and I thought that there was a really good chance that he figures it out as a bottom six physical option. I don't know if there's a bunch of offensive upside with him. I even if the role in Kelowna says otherwise, but really, really, really good player. I have him ranked not this high, but a bit further down. I think he's a really underratedly safe option.
I mean, I think he skates. I think he skates really well. He plays with his head up. Yeah, I actually think there is a little bit of offensive juice there, but
I mean, I think that we can also give credit to some other players if we're putting guys that we like. I have Riker Lee highest on this list.
Same.
I think that Riker Lee deserves a lot of love because he is one of the best upside options, even if there are a lot of issues with him. But I said this in the last meeting, but we talk all the time about like, oh man, if X was a little bit bigger, this guy would be so much fun. And I think Riker Lee is the case of like that's what happens when you have a super skilled small player and they actually grow. They need time to get their feet under them, but and that's what I think that Riker Lee needs. A bit more defensive engagement, a bit more polish, and I think that you have one of the best late stage upside swings in this class. Like outside of Riker Lee, like the options for who can become a top six forward falls off really, really fast.
I like Riker Lee as well. Yeah, I was just saying that I like him a lot as well. I feel like he feels a lot like Carolina Hurricanes draft pick. So yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna trade down, get him in the second round. It's in the cards.
Yeah, probably.
Thanks for tuning in. That wraps up our final ranking meeting. As always, make sure to check us out on our website at the link below and stay on the lookout for more NHL draft content from the Dobber Prospects draft team.